Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick at Qdabra Software. I want to welcome you to our weekly webinar. It's great to see so many people here. Well, if you can hear me okay, please raise your hand. We'll do a quick audio check. And I think we're okay with audio because we did check this in advance. But if you can hear me, thank you very much, Chris, Francis. Great to have you here. I have with me today Mel Clemente, who's one of our lead form designers, and we're going to be showing you how to do locking. Now, locking is a pretty important thing that you may not be aware of, but let's just check to see if you are. We've got two quick questions here before we describe exactly what we're going to talk about. I've got a poll here, just a one-question poll, two of them, and we'll see if you have had problems with people overwriting other people's content on SharePoint, and that's the first question. Obviously, most of you will say yes, because that's why you're here. And it looks like right now we're at 100%. So we'll give it a couple more minutes, a couple more seconds here. So we're at 60% and 83% of you say yes. And now we're at 80% and 86%, 90%. So about 9 out of 10 of you are here because of that. That's good. Let's take a look at the next one. One more question for you here before we get started. And that is, how do you avoid it? If you have locking issues today, I think that the most common technique is to use the check-in, check-out from SharePoint. That requires manually going into SharePoint, and clicking on the form and saying, do you want to check it out? And the problem with that, of course, is that people leave things checked out. The other thing that you might be using is if you're using the filler still, which is the old rich client technology, not the browser, to display forms, then that will lock it automatically. That's the second option here. And then for those of you that aren't using anything, then that's the last option. I'm guessing that that's the main one. Actually, 60% of you are using the manual check-in, check-out, and we're at 40. We're about half voted here, 45%. Okay, well, I'll stop the poll then. I just want to get a quick feel for what you're using today. So our agenda with this webinar is to show you how to use locking in the form. And the form, what we're going to do is we're going to add a control to your form, a custom control, which we're going to give you as part of this webinar. We're going to add the custom control to a existing form, and we're going to show you how to turn on locking with this control. So it's very easy to configure control. Mel is going to walk through how to do that. First, though, let's do a quick demo, and let's show you what we mean by locking. And we're just going to jump to the chase here, and I think I've got this on my next slide. So let me just go back and make sure. Okay, so here's our first demo, and we're going to switch to Mel. Mel, can you hear me okay? How's my audio? Great to have you here today. Thank you. I'm going to switch to you, and then we're going to go through this. The first thing we're going to do as part of this demo is we're going to have Mel open a new form and show you that she can lock it. We're going to show you how we did the locking, the custom control, after we show you what it looks like after you're done. So we're going to jump to the end first, and then we're going to come back and show you exactly how we did it. So she's just in a normal SharePoint library here. She's going to click on New, and she is logging in from Manila, so there might be a slight delay, but hopefully it'll come up pretty quickly here. So we've added the lock control to our standard 2007 InfoPath expense report form that you've seen in the past. We use this demo quite a lot, and it looks like she's having, maybe we might have to switch the order, Mel, depending on how long it takes to open on your side, because I just opened it on my side and it was pretty fast, but it's taking a long time, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Is it opening? You get two now.
It's loading. Yeah.
We are using our developer instance here of the forms viewer to open these forms, and that should not be a huge issue. I'm going to switch to my screen, Mel, and we're going to change the order because it looks like yours is really slow, and we don't want a demo failure. So quickly, did you get it?
Yeah, finally.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to switch back to you then. Okay, so Mel opens this form in the SharePoint library, and Mel, can you share your screen?
Okay. This is form loading.
Okay, so it's loading. It's taking too long. But when it opens, it's going to give her the expense report form. and it's going to show that she's locked it. The first thing the form does on open is it actually automatically checks it out. And so it isn't working for you. So I'm sorry I gave you back the baton here. I'm going to go back to me because I don't want to make this a quick experience for people. So let's see if it works any faster for me. And this is just a stock SharePoint 365 form library. And we just did this testing before the webinar, so I'm not sure why we're seeing these delays. But okay, so here's the form. And what you can see is this is our stock expense report form. So I'm just going to fill this out. And we'll just say we have a morale event. We're going to do a weekly team meeting. And I'll just fill out this really quickly here and then save it and show you how the lock works. So let's just say we took the team to a restaurant here in Seattle, and we're going to let's go to Starbucks. What the heck, you know? Let's say morale. Okay, and it's going to be $17. Okay, so when I click on save, what you'll see is that the form is locked at the bottom. Hopefully you can see this. But at the very bottom of the screen, let me just see if I can zoom in. I'm going to actually use my Zoom It tool to zoom in here so you can see this text better. Okay, so at the very bottom we have this text, and we display this text when they click save. So the person saved the form, but they haven't actually submitted it. So we could, so now what I'm going to do is switch to Mel. I'm going to actually switch to Mel, and she's going to open it, and we're going to see what she sees. So I'm editing the form still. I've saved it. I've gone to get coffee. I'm going to come back. I don't want people to overwrite my handiwork here. So Mel, let me see. I'm going to switch back to you now so you can show everyone what you see when you open the same form. So the form has been submitted to a SharePoint library behind the scenes here, and she's going to open it, and we'll see. Hopefully this won't take as much time as the new button took. And hopefully when she gets this open, it's going to show her that the form is locked by me, and you can see that right below there, locked by me. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my screen. We're just showing you kind of what the demo is, what you see at the end of this first, and just make sure I'm switching back to the right monitor. Okay, so now if I submit it, it's going to unlock the form and close it, and you can see there's the form right there. So we're going to switch back to Mel one more time, and she's going to open it up again and show that now that the form has been submitted, she can actually open it and not see the warning, the lock warning. So the idea here is that you add this control to your form, and it's going to automatically add rules to your form that locks the form when you open it or save it, and unlocks it when you submit it or close it. So that's the idea there. And looks like by opening it, she has now locked it, so that's great. You can see that she's got the approve and reject buttons. So she's playing the role of a manager in this case. Okay, great, Mel, thank you. I'm going to switch back to the presentation for a minute. We're going to come back to Mel in a couple minutes here, and she's going to show you how to add this control to your form. But first I want to kind of talk about what an XML template part is. So in InfoPath Designer today, if you open up your designer and you're designing a form from scratch, let's say, and we have a blank form, a browser-based form, we have this ability to add these custom controls. So you can see here at the very top of the screen where we have our controls, we have this thing called custom. So I can actually add a custom control to my form. So a typical example would be like if we added a rating control. So these custom controls are called XML Template Parts. And if you open up the designer again, you can see that this is a relatively, you can design these template parts actually using the designer. So many of you may not be familiar with these template parts, or you are because you took our class, our training class. So what I've done here is, what we've done to create these controls is we have gone in and used the InfoPath Designer to create these template parts. And once these template parts are created, they come with the view, they come with rules. So each one of these buttons here, if I preview this form, that I just added my XML template part to, you can see that I've got this rating button, right? And that's pretty cool. Every time I click on it, it's actually updating that number that you see down below. It shows us what the value is. And the rating control comes with this rating group field on the right here. If you can see that, that's our data source. So the XML template part comes with data source fields, groups and fields. It also comes with the layout. So you can see here the view has these buttons here, these star buttons, and this calculate value control. So that layout's pretty simple for this control. We're going to see a much more complex one in a second. But it comes with the view components, the data source components, and it comes with rules. So if we click on our manage rules, and you'll see that each one of these buttons has a rule to set the rating. So those were all copied in to this form when I added the custom control. And we also get data sources, but we don't see any data sources here because this control doesn't use them. So that's what an XML template part is. It's a custom control that you can add to your form using the designer. It includes those four things I just mentioned, the view section, the data source, any rules, and then any data connections. And it saves you time. That's why we use it. It is a huge time saver. But we don't use them necessarily for everything because they're hard to update. So what you want to do is you want to add them, get them done, and then use them. Don't develop the XML template part at the same time that you're developing your form. Make sure your common controls, your sections, your XTPs, make sure those are well defined before you start using them. So, you know, obviously, the XML template parts save you time, and that's the main reason to use them. They're very easy to add to your form, as you see. You just go up to the designer here, and you just go into the custom controls, and you click add, and then you search for your XTP. So you have to create one first, or use the one we gave you. So I'm just going to add the one that we have for the webinar today. And so the XTP has got an XTP2 file extension for 2010. And if we add this to our custom controls, you'll see that this is version 42 of our lock forms XTP. And now if I add it down below here, you'll see that we get this control. Now the XTP for the, and Mel's going to walk you through this in a second, but what I want to just quickly point out is this is a more advanced example. As you can see, it's got a much larger view section, and we've included the instructions into the view. So once you add the XTP, then you just walk through these instructions, and then you delete the instructions. Actually, this section is hidden, so you can leave the instructions in your form if you want. But once you've configured it, then the buttons down below will work to lock the form automatically when you open the form, and it'll show you the lock history. So that's one thing we didn't show in the first demo, but we will show after Mel shows you in detail how to configure this. So that's how easy it is to add. And I'm going to switch back to Mel, and she's going to show you how she configured the expense report form using that control. Mel?
Thanks, Patrick. All right, so I've done what Patrick just showed you. I've added the locking XTP into my expense report form. I'll show you that up here. So this is the stock 2007 expense report that we upgraded to 2010. Down here is the XTP with the instructions, and I'm just going to walk you through these instructions that look like there's a lot of steps, but it's just the simple less than 5-minute steps. So we've already done for the first step. We've added the XTP. Now we'll set up our list where the lock information gets submitted. So if you already created that the first time, no need to recreate. Every time you're just going to use that one centralized locking list. And let me just show you that real quick in here.
And I forgot to mention that at the beginning, Mel, but we have a list. We're using a list to do the locking, and you can use that list for all of your forms. It doesn't have to be one list per form. So in your site, where you have a bunch of forms, you'll use one list to handle all of your locks. Mel?
That's right. Yeah, so we use the form ID to determine which form is being locked, and we actually keep history. For example, this, you'll notice that we have the same form ID, meaning there's the history. It's been unlocked by myself at this date, at this time, and then um, the next the next time I open the form and try to close it or submit or save it or whatnot, then it's going to create a new record of that lock activity. So we keep a history as well. And a bonus here is we also record the state, what like the form status was when we tried to lock and unlock. All right, so that's a list where the form gets submitted. So like I said, I've already set it up, so I don't need to do step 2 anymore. Step 3, you modify your data connection because we're including our own website's data connection here, and this is the one. So it's pointing to our Qdabra.com SharePoint site. So you're going to want to walk through this data connection and enter your own SharePoint URL and just follow the instructions here, what columns to select and what to sort it by. It's basically ID descending. And when you're done with that, and I'm not going to go through that because I'm already pointing to the right location. So step 4 is double-clicking the list URL field right here because we're hard coding the the URL to the locked forms list, like so. So you won't have to, specify the URL. Everything's just dynamically going to happen behind the scenes. So that's step 4, and then step 5, because XTPs don't allow us to add submit data connections, we're going to have to do it in the XSend designer. So it's going to be a submit data to a web service, because submitting items to a SharePoint list uses a SharePoint list web service, which is in this format. So it's your site URL and then vt-bin lists.asmx. That's the URL to the SharePoint list web service. And this is probably the only step that's going to take some time. It's trying to connect to your SharePoint list web service. Right, and we're on step 5. And you're going to pick update list items. That's the operation that we need, and just click next here, say yes to the warning, and finish up. The data connection name is important because there are rules here that use that data connection name. So I specify that in the instruction. Name your data connection locked form submit. There's a key rules command that runs using that name. Okay, and since we're there, step 6 says to fix the Qdabra Rules data connection. Because when you inject an XTP into an XSN, it appends all the data connections that come with the XTP with the XTP file name. So we're just going to remove that so Forms Viewer can detect the Qdabra Rules.
And for those of you who are not familiar with Qdabra Rules, we have a plugin that we use to extend InfoPath forms, and that's called our rules, Q rules, and it comes with about 160 different commands. Those commands can be used, about 50 of those commands can be used in Forms Viewer today, even without Q rules. So the Forms Viewer is smart, and it allows you to use those commands even if you do not have Q rules. For those of you that have Q rules and you don't want to use Forms Viewer, you can actually move your current rules over to this new Qdabra Rules data source, and you just have to make sure that when you insert this lock XCP into your form, that you rename the old Qdabra Rules secondary data connection to something like Qdabra Rules _old, and then the new one is going to be Qdabra Rules. And then, of course, if you have any rules that are modifying the old Qdabra Rules secondary data connection, for example, you'll have commands that you're calling. You'll have to move those over, copy those rules to the new Qdabra Rules. But it can be used, this XCP can be used with forms that have Q rules and not Forms Viewer. So it's not just Forms Viewer. No?
Yeah. So we're actually on step 7, but all this is saying that because we're assuming there might be cases you already have a save and submit buttons of your own, so we already provided these for you, unlock before submit. So the scenario is going to be like before submitting the form, you'd want to unlock the form, right? Because when you open that form, it got locked by you, and when you submit, you want it unlocked. So you just want to copy all these rules right here and paste them into your existing submit button. Same goes with saving, because you basically want to relock it to yourself. If you want to go back to it like Patrick did before he went to get some coffee, before he went out, he saved it, so it's still locked by him. But if you don't have any existing save or submit buttons, then you can just keep what we provided, just rename them accordingly, save and submit. And then again, because XTPs don't have the ability to add submit rules, so you're going to want to insert your submit action right here. So say submit to library and add that action, which is my SharePoint library submit right there. Copy that and paste it on the save button, and you're all set.
Okay, let's just do a quick recap for those of you. We're going pretty fast. I know some of you probably lost us in the process, but what Mel just described is she described the process for adding this custom control, aka XTP, to your existing form. And there's essentially 6 steps that you need to go through. The first step is to, of course, step 0 or step 1 here, is to add that XTP control to your custom controls. And I showed you that earlier. And I want to also just once again reiterate that this XTP will work with forms. They don't need to be forms viewer, but they do need to have Q rules if they're going to be just a typical InfoPath browser form. And the browser forms will work with Q rules so long as you're a site collection admin. You can publish them just fine and they'll open in the browser, but you will need to make sure that the sandbox is running. For those of you with Q rules, you've already verified that. Now, the steps that Mel went through once again were she added the XTP, she set up the list where the form is going to be locking, adding the lock information. So you should create a list or set it up, basically. You have one list for all of your form libraries. And then she modified the data connection pointing to it so she could submit to it. Then she modified the URL that we're using. So she did a kind of a cool technique here. It's called a data-driven technique, which is to add the URL into the form so that we don't have to reconfigure as much. And all you have to do is double-click on that list URL value and then just change this to your list URL. So once you've created your list, you just paste it in there, and then that tells the rules how to interact with it, where to go to save it. You have to add the submit connection to that list, and then rename the Qdabra Rules secondary data connection, and then finally just reconfigure those buttons. So it's pretty simple, takes 5-10 minutes, but we're here to help you if you have any questions. So once you've got it added, let's just look at this form again. So this is the form that we just opened and created, and I'm going to open this form again and show you how it works again. When I open the form, it automatically locks it. You can see the lock history at the bottom. So one of the bonus items of this XTP is it queries the list and shows the history of the locking. And you can see that the time here is based on the browser time. You can actually change this to be a time zone independent, and we have a QRules command to do that, but we didn't for this webinar. We just used the stock time, so you can see Mel's got a different time than me. But it is showing us history in the order in which it happened, I believe. So the first time was 1:13. That must be that time, Mel. That's kind of a strange. I haven't really looked at that, but you can see that we do have the history here, and if you're all in the same time zone, you shouldn't see as much disparity in the time. We'll need to fix that or maybe look into that, but the time zone is the time for the browser, I believe, so that it's not server specific, so it does depend on where you're located. And for some people they want that because they want to be able to make sure that it's local time. But for those of you who are working across time zones, you can use the QRules time zone conversion command to convert those. We did not do this for this webinar. Okay, so then I'll prove this, and we'll open up one more time here and show that we have one more. So we don't have the section anymore because we approved it. Okay, so that's the quick demo, and Once again, XML template parts are how you create the custom controls. They're easy to create. You just go into the designer and you choose template parts. We've already created this one for you. So we have this Qdabra lock XTP, and what you'll get as part of this webinar is you'll get this lock XTP. We'll give you the sample form that we created. So there's the lock XTP, the sample form, and you'll get the presentation, of course, and you can walk through it. And we're going to upload this video to YouTube, and that's about it. We went through the demo. Does anyone have any questions? If you'd like us to walk through it again, let us know. We do have a question area in GoToWebinar. You can ask a question or post a comment. We appreciate you being here and watching these webinars. We will get the package out to all those who fill out the survey. We'll send it to you, and then of course it'll be available tomorrow for free from our website. You can go in and download it from the store. You'll have to register yourself. If you fill out the survey, we'll send it to you tonight, this afternoon, so you won't have to do that. So we want to thank you for being here. It looks like there are no questions, if that's either a good sign or a bad sign. And want to remind you that we do these every week, and we haven't actually decided on what next week's webinar will be. This week's webinar was delayed 1 week, so today is March 16th, obviously. Tomorrow is St. Patty's Day. We did the locking webinar. So next week on the 23rd, not the 16th, but the 23rd, we will most likely show you how to connect forms to other forms. There's a couple different techniques. You can also download this package from our website. Let me just show you where it is. So we have a InfoPathDev is our community site, and you can go up to InfoPathDev, click on Downloads, and click on Forms Viewer, and you can download the package right now from here if you want. But like I said, we'll send you the package as part of the survey response. And we do have one question, I think. Hold on. So Kathy says, thanks. Thank you, Kathy, for being here. And Mark McLean has a question. And let's see here. Since I stepped in late, locking rules need to be copied to all submit buttons correctly. Correct. So Mel, do you want to take that question? Do the rules need to be copied? I'm just going to switch back to the XTP. So here's the XTP after you add it, and this is the one for save, and this is for submit. So for save, we're doing the lock, as you can see on the right, and you'll want to copy these rules to your save button. And then I believe, Mel, copying the submit rules, all of them, to your submit button. Is that all that Mark needs to do?
That's right, yeah, and that's where using centralized logic, that technique comes handy. You just need to paste it in one location. If you want to talk to that, Patrick.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. So if you're using centralized logic, and we've done webinars on how to centralize your rules. The benefit of centralizing the rules is that you don't have to update all your buttons. So if you have everything centralized, then you'll just copy it to that one place where the rules are working. But if you have all the rules on all the buttons, then you need to copy it to all your buttons. Or if you just create a form from scratch, you can just use these buttons and just rename them like Mel did by going into button properties and just renaming it save and submit. And it's a little bit confusing because we were trying to make this helpful to use so you know what to do. But those are the two buttons that you'll need to either copy the rules from or rename. Mel?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone, and thanks, Mark, for that wonderful question. I hope we answered it for you. If not, you know where to find us. I want to thank everyone again for being here. We'll get the video up on YouTube, and hope to see you here again next week. Have a great week, everyone. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Take care, everyone.